where we're going to inspect some of this architecture from these cities in more detail with lost architecture and impossible builds. Another one of my favorite buildings is this Bannerman Castle. Bannerman Castle is found upriver on the Hudson River. It was supposedly created or built by a man named Francis Bannerman, hence the name, Bannerman's Island. Francis Bannerman himself was supposedly a businessman that originated from Scotland, and he had a fascination with wartime memorabilia, wartime surplus equipment, munitions, essentially a arms dealer, you could say. And his business, after moving from Scotland to America, became so profitable that he needed to expand, and he needed a place to be able to house all of this surplus military equipment from the American Civil War and just other military equipment from around the world. He needed to expand, and he needed a place so big that he decided to purchase this little island in the middle of the Hudson River, upriver New York State, and build a castle reminiscent of his days back in Scotland. So his business is doing so good that he decides to isolate himself. He decides to isolate himself on an island in the middle of the Hudson River and build a castle to hold all of his stock. And then in 1906, I believe that there was a fire, coincidentally, that destroyed this place. But what we can see here, or what I can see, is an old world castle, an old world American castle that has been replastered. It was originally old red brick, and it was plastered, rebranded Bannerman Island Arsenal. How can anyone run? It's hard enough running a business with all of the logistics in place, guys. It's nearby impossible, if not just outright impossible, to run a business where your stock is held on an island in the middle of New York State, in the middle of a river, in the early 20th century. What was going on? But it's a very interesting building. It's actually interesting to explore that island in a little bit more detail. There's a lot of ruins. It's a very small island. Supposedly it has its history linked back to the Dutch as well, the Dutch occupation of that area further back in time. Just a very interesting. You don't see castles like that in America, or you don't think of castles of that style and stature and size being present in North America, yet here we are. So anyway, moving on, we're going to have a little look now into all of this lost architecture, and we will start off by investigating the City Hall Post Office, New York State, 1905. This photo was taken, designed by Alfred Mullett, completed in 1880 and demolished in 1939. So the point of the lost architecture is just to show you buildings that existed that no longer exist now. So they were destroyed and replaced for whatever reason. Some they were replaced with car parks and other things that are needed in the modern world, and some were just destroyed for no reason. But you know, we got the wrought iron, little bell tower up here, little Antiquitech antenna. But again, just look at the people. You know, 1905, they had electricity by then, but they didn't in 1880. Didn't have power tools. Just a lot of brick structures all over. Big spire down here. Post office, just the sort of design that you would accept from, you know, you go to an architect and you're like, we want you to design a functional post office for us, please. And they come back with their plans, and you're like, yep, I approve. Let's build this. This is a functional, practical post office right here. Look at the raw iron on the top. A little bit of antiquitech here. Very techy looking. Again, you know, ground floor. You need to go up a few floors to get there. The floor that is the ground floor is cut in half. Mud flooded out. 4th Avenue, Pittsburgh, 1904. Demolished in 1966. I also find this little thing interesting on the wall. Like, it's like, you see the wings? What's going on there? It's kind of like a little kind of creature. Some sort of like ornamentation on this building, which is like this weird sort of like fairy creature. Really weird. Very weird. The Ryan Hotel, St. Paul, Minnesota. So 1905, this was demolished in 1962, same thing. You already got the eye for it now. You can see on the top, the spires. And then look at the footprint of this. Big building, opened, didn't say built, just opened in 1885. We can see it's mud flooded on the bottom. This reminds me of one of those buildings that we were looking at in India, you know, with this big sort of castle-like sort of turret here. The Holoden is in Cleveland, Ohio. Demolished in 1862 though. Same time as this, demolished in 1862. They seem to have been, when was this, in 1866? They ran amok in the 60s, didn't they? Yeah, people too focused on the Cold War, and then whilst they were keeping everyone fearful, they were out destroying the old world. Big epic building here, the Chicago Federal Building, supposedly built in 7 years between 1898 and 1905, but not much use after that. 60 years or so later, let's get rid of it. Mud flooded out. Big epic building. Just look at the size of this. Look at these little people, you know, mud flooded out again. Just a few steps to get up to ground level. Big columns. Look at the size of these columns. Big dome on top, and just surrounded by these epic big brick buildings. This is Shalaga of the old world, and they needed to remove the evidence of such. Remove this, build a big skyscraper. That takes everyone's attention away from these buildings here as well. Look at this, the Bentz Building, Broad and South Penn Square, so Philadelphia. 1900s, destroyed in 1926. Mud flooded out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, like 15 stories high. Very big bit, little antiquitech there with the ball on top. Yeah, just lost architecture, lost the time. Like, why would you destroy any of this? Why would you destroy this sort of architecture? The Metropolitan Methodist Church in Washington, D.C. This photo was in 1924 and it was demolished in 1936. This isn't necessarily such a spectacular building in itself. It's just the spire is so tall and epic looking. And again, just like a bit of tech on top, but it's just the size of that spire that really captured my attention. And then also in the background here, like this big dome going over here. I don't know what this is. Yeah, Jefferson Memorial. I don't know. Courthouse, just what you need for a courthouse. Columbus, Ohio, 1907. So it was built in 1884, again without any power tools, and was demolished in January 2012. So very recently this was demolished. Yeah, no news of that, just gone, taken away, taken from us, mud flooded out. Very epic. Look at all the raw iron, big epic bell tower. Wonder who that is on top. Yeah, so it's a few buildings for you. And then here's a few more. So we'll start off with a very famous building, the San Francisco Cliff House of 1896. This was the supposed second iteration of it. It burnt down many occasions, yet they still decide to keep rebuilding in the same spot. as you do, as seems to be a common occurrence with all of these narratives. But again, you know, this looks very Transylvanian. You know, that sort of castle-like top to it, Antiquitech on top. Yeah, very, very spectacular building. Burned to the ground 1907. Detroit Museum, opened in 1888, and within 80 years, destroyed. So again, not necessarily like super spectacular. It's just the fact that it's not here anymore. Again, 1960. There was something up with the 60s, wasn't there? It's just that style of building, and this is something that I saw a lot of when I was young and I came to America in Florida. I just see buildings like this, and you just don't get that sort of building here in the UK. And there is something about it. It's just like an epic building, and everything's bigger in America, as if it was built by giants, by a giant race. Just everything's bigger. The infrastructure's bigger, the roads are bigger, the curbs are bigger. Obviously the giants didn't build the roads and the curbs, but the buildings are bigger. They're like, it's like the size and scale, like the circumference of this turret here just looks so much bigger than it needs to be. And again, it's mud flooded. I wouldn't be surprised if again it's got a few stories underground, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 steps to get up to ground level, so it still goes further underground. Relatively young trees planted around here as well. And then this building reminds me of something that you'd see in like Harry Potter, in like a botanist class, you know, a botanist sort of like alchemy lab. So this is the exhibition building in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, 1872. Oh, destroyed by fire as you do in 1905. But look at this. Something about this design, look at this. I bet this big atrium here inside would have been really cool. Really epic looking inside. You know, a lot of glass, a lot of light coming into this sort of greenhouse here. And supposedly that was built in like a year or two as well. Very fascinating building. And then we have the Mark Hopkins Mansion, San Francisco, 1878. This photo was taken and it burnt down in 1906. A very Tartarian-esque design to it. I like this design on the edge here, and there's something about that sort of rotunda with the glass. And then here, this Sheriff Street Market in Ohio. So you know when I said earlier on with the underground, the underground that I showed in Cincinnati, Ohio. This is what the building looked like. That it was underground. That it was underneath. So again, a market house. But again, it's like the size of this, like the amount of bricks this would take. I'd like to see what was on that pediment there. Is the size and scale of this building. It's not necessarily like the features on it, it's just like the actual just the footprint of this building is massive, and it probably goes underground. Garrick Theatre in Chicago, Illinois, opened in 1891, destroyed within the next 60 years, 70 years. But look at the inside of this theatre. Look at the intricacies of this design. And this was destroyed and replaced with a parking garage. So this is the outside of it, and then this is the inside. But again, the attention to detail. What did I say? It's the attention to detail. The detail is where the spirit manifests. Crazy. And then we have this place here, which was the Waterworks Park in Detroit. This photo was in the 1870s. And then yeah, the water tower here. It's like, I don't know why they keep trying to convince people that these things were water towers. It's like, what is the practicality of holding water in these towers? Where is the water held? You really, like, I'd see that as like some sort of computer component, some sort of like obelisk-like computer antennae. Not a fucking water tower. But this here, again, cool looking building. Already looks like it's been boarded. It's only just opened and it's already been boarded up. It's already been opened and they've already been like, you know what, these windows ain't doing it for us. Let's just brick them up. Brick them up, boys. And then you've got these fellas here. You always see in these pictures as well, like these gentlemen with top hats on. He's got his hand in his coat, hidden hand. I'll show you some more hidden hand evidence later on. Almost as if like they've taken claim, like this is ours now. You see this? This is ours now. We own it. We own this land. And then we move into the impossible builds. So a few fairy tales to explore here in further detail. So the Williamson building in Cleveland, Ohio again, built in 1 year between 1899 and 1900, only to be demolished 80 years later. So this here, you know, you're looking at 15 plus stories, completely, you know, bricked out. 1 year to build. Like, these people with their horse and cart, how are they building something like this in 1 year? Like the door arch here, is that so necessary for people of 5 to 6 feet? You know, this massive arch here. 1 year, guys. And then this one here, the Tennessee Club, 1888 to 1890. So 2 years to build this. Maybe you could mud flooded though. For me, I just like the architectural design of this. Like this dome on top, I find really aesthetically pleasing. I'd like to live in here. It looks really cool. But again, you know, in order to get onto the first floor, a few flights of stairs up, here, here, and here. Look at this one. So this is the New Hotel Neverland, built in 1 year between 1892 to 93, demolished only 30 years afterwards. So look at this. To put all of the effort into building this with its like 15 plus levels, all the detailing on the top, the turrets, got some sort of like cymatic window up here, Antiquitech. In 1 year. In 1 year to build this. I don't know why they went with such an unbelievable narrative for it. It's like, at least make it a little bit more believable. I guess they are correct. No one gives a fuck, and no one digs and asks these sort of questions. So they have got away with it, and you know, it's got demolished, so you wouldn't even know. They supposedly build it in a year, and then they delete it. The thing is, they didn't build it. It was already here. Evidently, it was already there, and it probably took them a year to unbury it. That's what a year takes. It's probably to unbury it, maybe like wash it down. Maybe put a new facade on the outside, clean it up a little bit. Here's another one. City Hall in New York building, built in 1 year, 1880 to 1890, and then to be demolished in 1955. But look at this. I mean, this looks very old, but it's just, again, you can see all the Antiquitech antenna everywhere, but look at this. It kind of looks like it was part of like another building that should have been onto the side of it. Almost like this was a flank, like a side flank of a greater building that would have took up space here. Because if you were looking at the biogeometry of this, as I was discussing earlier, with the negative green, the horizontal negative green, there's also another aspect called vertical negative green. And if the vertical negative green isn't balanced by horizontal negative green, then it causes it can cause some electromagnetic interference. And it just looks like the way that this is rounded here and this is straight, it looks like there should have been something here. There should have been some big, filling up this whole area that we see here, something even grander and bigger should have been right there. To build that in 1 year though is absolutely silly. What bullshit. City Hall, Louisville in Kentucky, built between 1870 and 73, so in 3 years they whipped this up in Kentucky. In Kentucky. Again, you have to go up a few floors in order to get to the first floor. Everything else is buried underground. Big bell tower here, which you can still see the bell in use. That's kind of cool. Looks smaller. Looks like it should have had a bigger bell. Would have liked to have seen the pediment here, if it would have been like Phoenician adornments, if it would have been Romanesque. Then we have this place here, which is the House of Providence Hospital, Detroit, 1909. I mean, it's a castle. Look at it. And this is it here. So look at the actual footprint of it. And they managed to whip this bad boy up in a year. That's it there. In a year they build that. Again, it's like they like their castles. They like to whip up their castles in a year or so, don't they? In late 19th century America. Oh, that's early 20th century. And this is a very cool building. So this is the Beach Hotel in Galveston. So they built this in 1 year, between 1882 and 1883, and unfortunately it was destroyed by fire in 1898. How do you build something on a beach? How do you get the foundation to be able to build like a really sophisticated construction like this on a beach in 1 year when the tide comes in and out? Yeah. Someone please tell me. Striped as well. I believe it was red and white striped. Would have looked really cool, this. Maybe it had something to do with the hydropathy that I shown before. Again, you've got like a little kind of like bandstand here. Maybe that was like a water fountain or something, public water fountain. But I definitely think this was some sort of like hydropathy facility, just because it would have used the waters of the Gulf. Yeah. Impossible builds continued. And then we're looking at, let's start up here. So, demolition specials. I like that they even used to kind of put it out there as if like it was, you know, a display to go and watch. Demolition specials, getting rid of it. The New York Life Insurance Company building, Minneapolis, Minnesota. 1890, so 2 years to build, and then they got rid of it 50 years later. But again, mud flooded out. But it's the inside, you know. That's the other thing as well. I'm showing you the outside of these buildings, but the insides are just as spectacular. Look at these spiral staircases. You know, like I told you, spirals create toroidal fields. It's all to do with the augmentation of electromagnetic fields. Wrought iron everywhere, spirals everywhere on the stairs. What a shame to be demolished. The C.M. Forbes mansion, built in 1 year, and it's not necessarily a spectacular grand building. It just looks really cool to me. Like these details up here, it's all of the ornamentation on it. You know, it's just very techy, very futuristic. It's very retro future, actually. Very retro futuristic. And then just weird window design here. But again, ground level, you need to go up a few steps. Demolished in 1930. The Boeing house left, and the C.R. maybe mansion, just as you do, having a little pyramid out back in the back garden for the kids to enjoy. Both destroyed in the early 1910s, or 1900 to 1910, somewhere. Don't know why they haven't got a specific date on that. But again, proper old world-esque buildings here. These are like the definition of like an old world manor. For an old world people. An old world people that look, new trees that have been planted. So these would have been found, they would have been unburied to an extent. They repave the sidewalks, they plant new trees. But a very old building nonetheless. And then we've got the New York Hippodrome, built in less than 1 year. Again, just a ludicrous story. Between 1904 and 1905, no photographic evidence of the building, of the construction. Demolished in 1939. Do you know what this reminds me of? These little balls on top, they remind me of like tensor rings, of tensor spheres, where you coil wrap copper into like these shapes, and it creates like a tensor field. This reminds me of that. But again, it just looks kind of out of shape and out of proportion. Looks very kind of top heavy. Looks like it should be a much bigger building. I really like this building as well. The Erie County Bank Buffalo, opened in 1893. Demolished in 1968. But again, why do you need this as a bank? What function does this serve as a bank? We look at a lot of Antiquitech on the top. Very cool looking tech components on the top of this. But it's something to do with the facade, like the way that the brick looks on the outside. It just looks very castle-like, very epic. So much like grandiose to it. Mud flooded out, little bell tower over on this up here, and then there's also like some sort of detailing on the upper part of this building, and that's another thing that Dr. Ibrahim talks about. He talks about these patterns being put in place to cause an interference pattern, so that when you look at them, it's the same as like how you look at a sunset when the if you look out over an ocean and you see the sunset, the color difference between the ocean and the sky, and in the sun setting, it creates an interference pattern that's supposedly very soothing on the psyche and can affect it be like, almost like create an altered state of consciousness. And then I believe that's almost like wires on the top of these buildings. It's almost like it looks kind of like spiky. It would have been a lot more detail up close, but it creates like an interference pattern when you're looking up, and it separates it from the sky. And another thing I want you to take note of all these pictures as well, is that all the skies are always washed out. You never see any clouds, you never see what's happening in the sky, and that's, again, deliberate photo manipulation. Again, just proving, you know, all these washed out skies, because that's where the airships were. That's where you see the technology in the sky that they don't want you to see. This one here was the old post office. Built in 2 years, 1880 to 1890. Again, you know, steps to get up to the ground floor. Bit of tech here on the top. And that's in Augusta, Georgia. So yeah, that's some lost, or I should say some impossible builds for you. But remember, nothing is impossible with horse and buggy. These always give me a little laugh. These fucking people just thinking that you can move a house with just horse and buggy, little leverage system. How are they doing that? How are they doing that? Oh yeah, you know, I feel like moving a house, honey. Alright, well, let's pack up our stuff. And he's like, no, we'll just take the whole house. Let's just move the whole house. I like the house, just don't like the location. Let's move it down the street. I got the horses out back waiting. What is going on here? Look at this one. Just moving your house through the snow. This one, like, that seems like such a mammoth task. It would be easier to just rebuild the house. It would be easier. It's not that even an impressive house. Just rebuild it. Why are you trying to move the fucking house? Like, what? You have to reel it in, so then it moves it across this dirt, this fucking uneven mud dirt land that's unleveled, and then you have to move this and reel it in again. The lengths that these people went to. Amazing.
If you enjoyed this presentation and feel inspired to support both yourself and this channel, then head over to primalalchemy.co.uk. Awaken your potential with the world's only visionary health brand. Discover our collection of tonic herbal elixirs, rare crystals, and holistic health technologies. All chosen and created with intention, so you can focus on the energy you bring into your life. Whether you're grounding yourself, seeking clarity, or elevating your routine, Primal Alchemy supports every step of your journey. Use code REBUS10 for 10% off all superfood elixirs at primalalchemy.co.uk.